everyone who's here so far. We're back again to doing Zoom meetings, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Looks like we've got a dozen of us so far, and I'm sure some others will join in. If a couple new faces, I think I see here. So if it's your first time attending a straight line meeting of any sort, welcome. The meetings are always welcome to anyone to attend. And we're always looking for new members. Those that are interested in signing up for the 2022 year, you have until the first Tuesday of February to get your dues in, $40 annually to Grimsby Tackle. And the dues, what they typically cover when things are normal, we would have an awards night, usually in February or March, and hand out the awards from the year previous. We didn't last year. We ended up having a summer barbecue instead at the store. And the dues also go towards the big fish contest, which we hold annually. For 10 species that are eligible, the biggest walleye, pike, muskie, largemouth, smallmouth, and then the 5 major trout and salmon species. So all the details for that are at the store, but more or less it's like on the honor system. If you have a straight line angler there witnessing it, or if you don't, then you need photographs of the tape measure with the length and the girth, and the largest fish for each species usually wins some Grimsby Tackle gift certificates, and some years there's other prizes. So then we have other events and tournaments throughout the year. So we'll see. The executive is going to be meeting in a week or two. We're going to try and plan things out as best we can, and we'll see. We only had we had the Catch the Fry tournament on Labor Day weekend last year, and I think that was really the only fishing event that we did. So hopefully we'll have much more next year. So I'm the VP of tournaments. Lars is currently the president. We're in the second year of our 2-year term for the executive. Rob Wiersma, who's here, he is our VP of membership. George Lang, he's not here yet. He's the VP of meetings. Amanda Higgins is our secretary. Martin is our treasurer, and Preston serves as our past president. So we can just start with share some fishing reports while we wait for others to join, and then we'll get to the main part of the meeting. If anyone's been out fishing lately, the last little while, I know in December there was a lot of wind, and places like Dalhousie and the Niagara River and Lake Erie were pretty muddy and unfishable, but there were some windows to get in.
The garage.
Are you on mute?
Sure.
Are you on mute?
Hold on. Sorry.
Anyone?
Are you?
Oh, I don't know if. Trying to see here. I think I had everybody unmute. I know some guys were able to get out this last week on the Niagara River. The water had started to clean up, and they were getting rainbows and browns and some Lakers off the bar, and even some walleye on both ends of the river. And seems like the ice is starting to set up further up north. Nipissing has ice, and I heard guys that got out this weekend, the opener for that did fairly well, and spots around like Gravenhurst and Couchiching and others are starting to freeze. I think some of the Kawarthas have safe ice. So does anyone else have anything, any other reports to share? Have you heard anything, Shane?
Not as far as a decent bite per se. Just like you had mentioned about the Niagara River. The Niagara Bar, I think, was decent for a little bit for the guys drifting on the Niagara Bar. There was a little bit of a walleye fishing fun, troll that was happening off of Port Maitland. It wasn't much, and I think we've seen the tail end of it. I only got out there for maybe 3 hours, and it didn't get a pullback at all. And I was hearing it was like between a no fish day all the way up to as much as 4. So difficult to say that that was worthwhile, I would say, to go out there. The night bite this whole fall has been, well, I mean, conditions haven't been the greatest. So the night bite for the walleye was a tough go for sure.
Right.
But that's all I got. Yep.
Yeah. We'll see what weather we get going forward now. But yeah, if no one else has anything else to share right now, I guess we'll get into the main part of the meeting. You know, we've asked Shane to jump in as our guest speaker. He's going to just give us a brief recap of kind of his experience on the water from both Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. A little synopsis of, you know, how the fishing was, and maybe some information that he's gathered from some of his other boats that he networks with. And as well, there was some information released. There was a presentation from the New York DEC, which is the equivalent of our MNR in Ontario. It was regarding about the state of Lake Ontario. And as well, Shane will share whatever information he has from the FMZ 20 group as well. So Shane, the floor or the computer screen is yours.
All right, thanks, Mark. Welcome everyone. Yeah, as Mark had mentioned, you know, there's been a recent message that's been sent out that our Chinook salmon numbers are going to be increased slightly, and I do say slightly. It is going to be 50,000 for us and 50,000 for the New York guys. So 100,000 more Chinook salmon are going to be stocked. You know, I guess from the standpoint of, you know, where we were in 2016, certainly will be a lot different. I have a number of screens I'm going to share, probably do a bit of a, you know, kind of a rundown of some of the information that we have gathered from the FMZ 20. And for those that are unfamiliar with the FMZ 20 Council, it's a stakeholders group that has been, I guess, an invitation from the Ministry of Natural Resources to represent various stakeholders around Lake Ontario with different interests, everything from Aboriginal to Trout Unlimited to Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, the Commercial Fisheries Association, and then pretty much environmental groups and you know, urban fishing, as well as representation of various fishing clubs and geographically around the lake. So for an example, myself, I represent the South Shore, and myself, along with Jerry Mitrovich, we represent the St. Catharines Game and Fish, and I represent some of the Hamilton clubs, including the Straight Line Anglers. So we are really just the conduit of information that comes from you, obviously, to go to the MNR, but also from the MNR to the clubs. Some members, such as Randy Scott and Aaron Shirley, they are members at large, representing the, you know, different facets of the fishing community. But then you also have some members that are representing fishing clubs, like the Halton Salmon and Trout Association by Ben Godfrey. We have Glenn Anderson, who's from the Metro East Anglers. So you have you know, the Central Lake Ontario Salmon Association by one of our longest standing members, and certainly the kind of the Ontario's grandfather of pen rearing, Al Van Dusen. So we have a great complement of people, you know, all the way around the lake, and the council really works well together. We've been in existence, I want to say, since 2008. And I've been on the council since the very inception of it. And it's been, if there's anything that I could say, is it's been an educational opportunity. And you never stop learning. You learn from the best in the business, those that are, the bios that are concentrated on the fisheries, particularly Lake Ontario's fishery. And you learn a lot from these folks. They're interested in our opinions as well too. I think in the 80s, maybe even in the early 90s, there was always this misconception that the Ministry of Natural Resources doesn't want to listen to the common angler. They want to just go and do their own thing. Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore, and especially with the FMZ Council, it shows that bridge, that connection with the stakeholders that have interest in Lake Ontario's fishery. And I think it's really bode well. I mean, there's been so many great things that have happened from council, such as the expansion of the net pen program around the lake. Also concentrating on, where fish should be stocked and for what reasons. What's the premise of those? Thinking back in 2008 and how far along we've come, and even those, different perspectives, we've come leaps and bounds, and the fishery has changed along the way too. We've seen, the massive increase in the mid-teens of the 2012 to 2016 amazing fishery, and then maybe a slow and steady decline from that point. So the council has seen, a great deal of change, and we've certainly tried to adapt as best as we can. I say we, I mean, ultimately the decisions that are made are those of the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Department of the Niagara, the New York DEC. So those, a lot of what has churned out from some of that, opportunity to gain some perspective of what's happening in Lake Ontario's fishery. It seems to be that, what we saw as maybe the decline of our fishery since the mid-teens, 2012 to 2016 timeframe, which was the big boom. I think a lot of it has to do with when we lost a few of our year classes of that 2014-2015 year classes of alewife. So those year classes really hurt our fishery going forward for a number of years. And they have just announced this year that those numbers seem to be on the rebound, which is really, really nice to hear. In fact, they're talking about potentially the record year one class of alewife being reported now. Year one alewife is probably the most difficult year class, and they're the smallest ones, right, of the population of alewife. So it's really hard to get a handle on what number of fish that are out there in the lake. But based on statistics of what they were able to catch in the spring trawls, it looks like we're seeing a bump, and that's really good news. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're automatically flipping the switch to excellent fishing again. Right now, for an example, we have these year class of first year class of alewife. They don't actually become Chinook salmon prey, editable size that they want to forage on until they reach year two. So we have a little bit of time before they actually influence our Chinook salmon in getting them on the feed. However, with that, because we were proactive, and this is partly to do with communications through your council, we started to diminish our numbers after seeing that poor year classes back in the early, in the 2014-2015 year classes when they showed up in the trawls. So we started to knock down our numbers, especially the Chinook salmon, but also for lake trout. and we diminished it by 20% year over year, which brought us down to a number, I believe it was I think we're at 350,000 Chinook salmon now. Meanwhile, in 2016, we were looking at a number around 600,000. So not quite half, but certainly we've knocked those numbers down quite a bit. 2021, we did stock Chinook salmon. This time back in the pens, we got the pen projects going again, which was not the case in 2020 when the pandemic started. It was all lake stocking or tributary stocking. Pen projects were on hold because of the pandemic. So if you're considering those fish and reaching maturity, you're looking at that 2023 year class as being year as being your mature fish, and you're probably seeing you're going to see those fish becoming fewer in numbers, but certainly potentially larger fish. They have more fish to eat. So although the prey is going up, right, and the number of stocking we've been doing on a time series at the same time, finally they're starting to come up as well, but because of this year's stocking. But there's a lag. There's a 3 or 4 year lag before we start to see this rebound in our catch numbers, I'm guessing. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of factors that come into calculating how many fish you're going to catch in a year, what your success rate is. But if we're talking about counting the number of heads of fish, it looks pretty good. I think I heard a. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to say, if anybody has any questions at any time, you can just use the chat function on the bottom of your screen, and I'll see those and I'll relay those to Shane when appropriate. So if anyone has any questions at any time, we certainly welcome them.
Yeah, that's good. What else can I say about the fishery? I mean, so we are increasing our numbers. So from 350, we'll be back to about 400,000 Chinook salmon going into the lake this year. And interestingly enough, that from a production standpoint, the space that is used in our aquaculture facility that raises the Chinook salmon, but also other species. Normandale, it's been at half of its space complement. So you can imagine, having a facility that's been run at half capacity essentially, and it's really actually more beneficial if we can actually utilize more of that facility. So to increase the numbers, there's a benefit to the M&R. It's not all the conspiracy theory is always that they want to reduce the number of fish that they have to raise in a aquaculture facility to save taxpayers' dollars and maybe concentrate on other things, but that's not the case at all. You have a facility that's already been built. Much of the infrastructure that runs the hatchery already has the expense in place in order to run even only at half capacity. So it's not of any benefit at all to the M&R for us to run with fewer fish. A few other things, updates from Lake Ontario's FMZ. Last year, we didn't stock Hamilton Harbor. We didn't get our walleye. And it looks like we're hopeful that we get those fish this year. Interestingly, 2020, we had a reduced number of fish that were stocked, and then no fish at all stocked last year. So I'm hoping that doesn't have any effect on the Hamilton Harbor fishery. But hopefully we can bring that number back to what is our complement of 100,000 fish that's supposed to be stocked on a biannual basis. So every year we're supposed to get 100,000 for Hamilton Harbor, and another 100,000 the next year we'll go over to the Toronto Harbor.
Mm-hmm. What a story that's turned into, that Hamilton Harbor walleye fishery. I think we're approaching, it'll be 10 years this coming summer when they first put those first batch in there. And you're hearing of numbers of good quality fish being caught by shore anglers all around the harbor, and by others boat fishing, and even those that ice fish it when there's safe ice.
There was a question that came in from Jamie that asked, is there going to be an increased number of Chinook salmon based on the bump of 50,000 for this coming year? Will there be more on the North Shore? That answer we don't have yet. In fact, we're supposed to be, the FMZ Council is supposed to get together and talk a little bit more about allocating these new numbers. One of the aspects that I don't know, maybe it's an opportunity from this point. We've hit our rock bottom, being down at 350,000 Chinook salmon. We've reached our rock bottom. So if we're going to start to climb in numbers now, it only makes sense that we start to kind of rethink about where we're going to put these new fish, the fish that are being bumped into our complement. So, one of the things is, looking at where we're going to distribute these fish. A few things that come to mind is the West has been hurting for a long time. And I say hurting because we're just simply not seeing the returns of staging Chinook salmon. When they reach maturity, they're not showing up at the mouths of the rivers like they used to. Credit River, the Port Credit area was probably the capital of Chinook salmon fishing in all of the Great Lakes, with a massive run of Chinook salmon. And now it's merely just, it's not a destination. Port Dalhousie, if anything, has been a better destination than that. And its numbers for returns have been dismal as well. A few other interesting things too along those lines. We've introduced pen rearing and net pen projects, and there's a significant amount of interest in whether those fish mature at a younger age. Recent study this year has shown that as much as 1/3 of the population are coming in at year 2 instead of year 3. So you're talking fish that are about 8 to 12 pounds coming up the creek to spawn. They reach maturity faster. And the hypothesis is that some of those fish have been coming from pens. They call it burnout. So they grow exponentially faster than natural fish, and they reach maturity faster because of that. So early stage of their life, they're fed, they grow fast, they have great survival, they're top of their predation against, let's say, in competition with natural fish, they're able to get ahead. And now they're seeing that potentially they've been coming to maturity faster. So 1/3 coming in at year 2 instead of year 3. So that's an interesting little stat. Reversing from that, if we're going to get back into lake stocking, I'm not sure that that's also going to be a solution, because as we know, imprinting is one of the things that we desire, to be able to hone in on, getting more fish to come into our home port is really kind of a neat little aspect of the pen projects. Though for those that are unfamiliar, when holding fish in the net pen, it provides us an opportunity for those fish to determine, they acclimate to the water, but they also determine their home base, or where they're going to come back to when they mature, their natal waters. So when they're raised in the hatchery, they're at a young stage, and then at a particular point in time in the spring, they reach this start of a phase called smoltification. And it's really that time frame where it's really pivotal. They need to imprint to the waters that they're going to come back to when they're mature. That window of opportunity is usually planned to be in the pens in the month of April. So that's how they find their way home the 3 years later when they mature. So it's a benefit to, you know, the ports that have pens. For an example, Port Dalhousie has 60,000 Chinook salmon that are penned, and we have the largest site of penned fish on the Ontario side. So we're very fortunate that way. I think there was a few other questions that came in the chat. Mark, is there? I didn't see them pop up. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I think you answered them all. The last one, Chris was asking, when will the release be? And as you said, Shane, usually the pens get their fish off in the middle of April most years.
Yeah, exactly. So generally what they try to do is send the fish to the furthest east pens, which would be your Wellington pen. And then they start to bring the fish into each of the pen locations moving towards the west. Port Dalhousie tends to be the last port that gets their fish. And the reason for it is Port Dalhousie historically has the coldest water temperatures. And that is actually a benefit to us because cold water tends to also hold more dissolved oxygen, and our water quality is premium in Port Dalhousie. The drawback to cold water means that the fish's metabolism and its growth rates become slower. So the fish that we stock in or put in the pens, we have been having great success with our pens and our growth rates in Port Dalhousie, but a big portion of that is because we are the last sites to get our fish, and it allows that additional few days, as much as a week before we get our fish, to get the temperatures up. We're also in the marina now too for our pen, so it helps with a few degrees warmer on those sunny days, and it'll help our fish too as well.
Maybe.
Yep.
Maybe Shane, just for maybe those that aren't as familiar with the pen projects, maybe in about 5 minutes or so time, maybe you just give a brief rundown history of how the pen project started in on the Ontario side of the lake back in, I think it was 2008, 2009.
Yeah, friend of Al Van Duzen is he lives in Wellington, and he started with the Ministry of Natural Resources asking to do a pen, have a pen set up, and as an experiment. And I think Barracoven was the first location of that pen. And what he was talking to the New York guys, as well as the guys from Lake Michigan, which really kind of they were big proponents of pen rearing, and they do it in a much larger scale. But he decided to do it for the MNR as kind of a test case. And sure enough, he was seeing observations of Chinook salmon coming back into Barracoven, and then being able to see the results of those fish being able to home back in. Barracoven wasn't a stocking location, a lake stocking location. So the fish that were returning 3 years later were as a result of his pen. So he knew that imprinting process was a success. And then from there, it grew. I believe it was Bowmanville, Newcastle area was the second pens. And that was, with the Metro East Anglers. And then it expanded from there. And I think it wasn't, but maybe 3 or 4 years later, we had pens all the way across, the North Shore and all the way down into Port Dalhousie. How does the straight line anglers fit in all of the products, the progress in the pen projects? We were a big contributor of the creation of the pens, the construction of the pens. So while Metro East Anglers was, the kind of the figurehead of where pens could be located, and the process in which a club, for an example, could apply to have a pen site, and some of the things that the hoops that they had to jump through in order to get a pen site on the map. We were more along the lines of constructing the pens for the programs that were granted the opportunity to have a pen. And that seed money came from Suncor, which was Randy Scott. So Randy Scott, working from Suncor, was able to get grant monies to give to the Straight Line Anglers Club to use for pen creation. And another name drop here, Dave Viles, which has been a longstanding member of the Straight Line Anglers. He owns All Tool Manufacturing, and he donated his time. So the materials that we got for the grant money from the Suncor monies went towards the materials of the pen, and then Dave Viles used his shop and his manpower to build the pens for sites such as I believe the Brawny pen, 2 pens out of Port Dalhousie, and 1 pen, I believe, Scarborough, the Bluffers Park has one of our pens as well. So there's maybe Port Credit too. I'm sorry, Port Credit I think also has one of our pens. Yeah. So we've been a big part of the success of the pen project. Sure enough, they could have built their own pens, using the specifications that were originated, but Dave Viles has created these pens, and I would say many steps forward from the original drawings engineering drawings that were created. It was basically a piece of paper on grid paper with a pencil that was drawn out how to build these pens, and he has his staff with CAD and with all the materials and the milling machines and everything else to be able to build these things to specification. So they're a thing of beauty. If you get a chance to see the one in Port Dalhousie, definitely take a look at it. Wrap around floats so that garbage doesn't get into the pen, and all sorts of stuff like that was part of Dave Viles' vision for the new generation of pens.
Yeah,
so go ahead, Mark.
And I was just going to say, in the last few years too, there's been the addition of automated feeders, and as well they can now take their temperature readings remotely instead of having a volunteer going down a couple times a day to log that information as well. So there's been some nice additions along the way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I can share a few screens if you want. Entirely up to you guys. Some of the stuff that I've already talked to you about, but it would be in greater detail, of course, on the screens. Or I could switch gears and talk a little bit about Lake Erie, or even some of the experiences out on the water over the past year. What's the feeling from the group?
Well, I see we just had a couple questions come in as you're chatting. Rod was asking if we had any info about the salmon fishing out of the Napanee area of Lake Ontario. I don't really have much to report. I think you might be referring to maybe the Scotch Bonnet area, which is a popular spot down for that end of the lake, but I don't have anything myself to share. I don't know if you have any info, Shane.
Yeah, I mean, as far as how the fishing went, so one of the things that's also really good with the FMZ 20 Council is we have this round table, especially with the anglers on the council, being able to describe how their season has gone, what is their observations, how many fish are coming over with lamprey scars, is it more than normal, are they seeing a particular disease come up with some of the fish that they've caught, just different musings that they see out on the water, some of the things that we share. But one of the obvious trends with our reports when we go around the table is how good the fishing was at what times of the year. And that eastern side of the lake this year was was, I think, a little bit better than the west side. Talking to Al Van Duzen in the council meeting, he had mentioned that they had an excellent July. And their fish did show up from between Coburg all the way to Salmon Point. So that stretch of the lake, that far east corner, if you want to call it that, was productive. And they had the Chinook salmon there. The west was, I would say, much less and very unpredictable, more loose knit, I would say. Fish, were caught one day and then not the next day in the same areas. If you caught a few, you're doing okay, but you're not going to fill the boat. That was the kind of the same message that we are hearing from a lot of the anglers, especially along the west, all the way through to even the Central Basin. There was just simply not as good a fishing or consistent fishing throughout the season. The Niagara area did have really good fishing for about a 2-week window for Chinooks in the Niagara plume, as a matter of fact, but that seemed to have dried up really quick, and those fish moved on really quickly. So we didn't really have a sustained spring fishery that we were hoping for. Some of the reports from New York, however, had said that the West was better. So think of it geographically. They're not far west. They're, maybe in line with Toronto, if they're talking about that straight across. So, their fishing may have been a bit better from the old Cotton Wilson area than normal. But, from our perspective, considering it the West, it's still a bit of a stretch. So it's hard to judge between apples and oranges, really, when you're talking about South Shore versus North Shore. And that's true. Every year is a bit different. These fish set up differently, and your fishing could be better in one area of the lake versus another. Just as simply, it looks like a general trend, kind of like when people talk about global warming, but yet really we're talking about, climate changes in weather rather than, this trend of warming. But the same holds true with our fishing in the West. We see, our fishing, some years we have banner excellent fishing, and then, many years, after that, you find it much less. So, we're riding, I would say, a downward trend on the West End. Even though we may have some peaks and valleys, generally the average is seeing a downtick in our fishing over time. And I'm hoping that maybe now that we've hit rock bottom, that 350K of Chinook salmon, now when we start to infuse more fish into that complement, that we can start thinking about, let's put those fish in the West. Let's consider the Central Basin as natural stocks, not stocking potentially more fish on top of natural stocks. And maybe eliminating some of those stocking sites that we've used to have in the Far East. So, there's a bit more of conversation that needs to happen. I think the FMZ Council, I did prime Andy Todd, which is our lake manager, to say that I was really interested in having that conversation. And then I'm hoping that, in February, when we do get together with that conversation, that we can talk about it, changing maybe some of the allocation of where we put fish.
And the coho fishing, we probably should just mention that there was certainly a huge uptick in those numbers this year from late May through early July. There was a lot of them out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our numbers are really good for catch rates this past summer, but we didn't stock any fish. We didn't stock any cohos, and our coho numbers the year before that. So I should maybe back up a second. So the Ministry of Natural Resources, they don't stock coho salmon. All of those fish that are stocked for coho salmon come from the Metro East anglers. and in the Ringwood hatchery. So they raise the coho salmon in Ringwood hatchery and then stock them in the Credit River. They also do their egg collection in the Credit River. Well, if we don't have a run of mature fish, and that's tends to be what's been happening over the years, is we're having fewer and fewer adults to be able to pick, to be able to gain enough gametes to create enough eggs to raise in the hatchery. So we're not seeing enough adult returns in order to make that fishery happen. And I think we're really starting to see the pinch right now. I don't know what that means for us in the future. Maybe we need to collect our cohos from the Ganaraska or some places where naturalized coho salmon have been found, to be in consistent numbers, which tends to be some of those tributaries in the Central Basin. You're talking Bowmanville Creek and the Shelter Valley and Newcastle going up in the Ganaraska, and all of those tributaries seem to be the ones that are carrying the load for the coho salmon that are naturally coming from Ontario waters. The states do stock coho, their numbers and whatnot. They seem to be a little bit better on their program. But I think a lot of cohos that we're seeing now, they're saying that about 45% of them are actually natural fish. So interesting number, and I see Jamie's got his hand up there. Jamie, you have a question?
Sorry, there we go. I figured out how to use my phone again. No, I did help out with the MEA collection, or the try-to collection, and they got I think we got a total of 6 fish.
Yeah.
And they needed at least, I think Glenn was hoping for 25 pairs for them to they need 25 pairs from the Credit to make it worthwhile to go to Bowmanville and Ganaraska to try to get the rest. They just don't seem to be going as far as the dam. Both Norville and Streetsville didn't have them this year. So I think this is year 3 of not collecting any eggs. So I think there's no, unless they're returning naturals now, there's no more stocked fish.
Yeah, it's a big pinch right now, and it's unfortunate, really. I particularly I love my coho salmon. That is it's a great species of fish, and I hate to see that program go away because we can't get enough pairs.
But it makes no sense though, because there's so many coho, and there was big coho around this year too.
There
right?
was, big coho.
And from all across both the north and the south shore, there was really good coho fishing. So they're not all coming from the Salmon River. So, but maybe they do, and they're all just make the big run back to Oswego at the end of the year, or not Oswego, but Pulaski. So
interesting scenario there for sure. I don't know what's going to happen with coho. I'm hoping that we have that discussion too, although typically that coho is not really a prioritized fish for the MNR, because they're obviously not using resources to stock it. So those conversations tend to be Metro East anglers and the interested anglers like myself, and many others around the lake that like the coho to be around, is when that conversation happens. But normally is it led from the MNR. Any other questions on that?
We had one from Lars. He was just asking, has there been any thoughts about putting more pen sites on the South Shore for the Canadian side? And I think, I can answer on that, over the years, Dalhousie has increased the number of pens that they've added to their site, and it is, the most ideal spot, with the water and the situation. It's just, there's only so many prime locations and secure ones, and ones that have a volunteer base nearby to take care of them.
Yeah, I will say also too that there was an interest in expanding the pen projects, particularly in the Hamilton Harbor area. And there was talk of potentially having a pen stationed in or around CCIW, the Canada Center for Inland Waters, near the Skyway Bridge. And there was potentially even, a little bit closer to Grindstone Creek and, away from the steel mills kind of thing, and in better, well, actually it's the water treatment plant that is most polluting of the Hamilton Harbor water. So, trying to stay away from those areas and give, better dissolved oxygen in whatever site that we find. But the there's a few, as Mark had mentioned, one of the biggest problems that we've been finding is, obviously water quality is a concern, but also volunteers that are committed. And luckily, some of the clubs that are operating these pens, they have made a commitment to operating the pens without fail. So St. Catharines Game and Fish, for an example, Lyle Gator is head of the pen project in Port Dalhousie. And going around the horn, you have the Salmon and Trout, the Halton Salmon and Trout Association, and with their pens, and Port Credit, the Port Credit anglers, they're also running their pens. So you have commitments there, that it's not just willy-nilly. I mean, you got fish in there that need to be fed, so it has to be looked after, and there's work to it. I mean, at the end of the season, pulling the pens out, cleaning the pens, putting them properly, storing them away, and then preparing for the season coming up, ordering the food, and just making sure that everything is on the up and up. So yeah, it's definitely not an easy endeavor. For volunteers is part of that. Choosing sites is also talks a lot about what advantage does those sites provide to the Chinook salmon fishery. We've learned that the Port Credit site, for an example, is not an optimal site for from a biological standpoint of keeping those fish alive. They've had a number of instances where the water quality is diminished quickly. But at the same rate, they have the advantage of of the local government having a considerable interest in the fishery, the Chinook salmon fishery. You remember, although it's not Mayor Hazel, is it? Yeah, Hazel. She's not there anymore. She's moved along, but there's still, their council has got a great interest in the fishery. So it brings a lot of publicity to the project and what the Chinook salmon, return of the Chinook salmon, is all about. So it's got some PR capabilities. So each site has a bit of a mix of the reasons why that pen is there. Some of them are probably not a great site. Or if you're considering, the concepts of why a site is, what makes a good site, there could be the thought that, it needs to complement the incoming stream. So for an example, Brawny, a pen at Brawny would hopefully draw in fish to come up the creek. It has that capability of bringing fish into a local fishery. Meanwhile, Port Dalhousie, same thing. It has an outflow of Port Dalhousie's that would draw fish back to it. I'm not so sure that Bluffers Park would be an example that has that benefit. So there's pros and cons to all of these different sites, and I'm hoping that at this time we can kind of discuss what those sites, what makes a good pen site, and if we're going to start to increase our numbers, should we also look at where we have pens, and concentrate on where we should have pens mostly.
I think you kind of touched on it here and there, but just an overall couple minute synopsis of, from your trips on the water on Lake Ontario? And maybe we'll go to Lake Erie.
Yeah, from a guiding standpoint, we were shut down all the way through till the middle of June. And so I never actually had any charters. I was fun fishing a little bit, but is few and far between. I didn't get out all that often. But when we did get out in the spring, it was decent fishing. Brown trout fishing was maybe not as good this year. But there was some periods of time where we caught some browns. It's not that the water conditions weren't right. I think they were right. It just they didn't seem to be as plentiful for some reason this past spring. Chinook salmon, we had a good window, a couple weeks there of good fishing, and then it petered right off as the lake started to set up. Those fish seemed to have disappeared in the month of June. We then started to see a return of good fishing, I would say late June, early July, and then it just died right off. After that, it was tough fishing. We had maybe a week and a half of good stager fishing in front of Port Dalhousie. But other than that, it was tough go. The offshore bite. So typically in August, if the inshore salmon fishing, and I say inshore, less than 120 feet of water, isn't happening, then you can kind of, you can bank on going offshore and catching a boatload of rainbows and mixed in with some juvenile Chinook salmon and coho salmon. But that wasn't even a thing this year. Forays into the the blue zone really didn't amount to a whole lot. It was a struggle even out there for numbers. And again, the Western Basin, I just don't feel like we had a good amount of or good volume of good water that brought fish in. So hard to really make ends meet from a guiding standpoint when some of your clients have seen amazing fishing in the past. Setting the bar, and trying to achieve to that bar it was a tough go for sure. Mark, did you want to talk about Lake Erie at all?
Yeah, we can switch to that. I said, but I'll just add too. I think what we saw too this year was, the lake was so low for a while, and I think many of us kind of had drummed up a theory that with the water being so low, there wasn't as much sediment and nutrients being stirred up and dispersed around the lake. I remember we just had nothing but clear water except for in front of the Niagara River there for many weeks. So that probably maybe attributed to why we didn't see as many brown trout caught, because they were probably very wary in that clear water. So and also just why the typical Jordan, Charles Daly, Grimsby, Beamsville stretch was much slower than normal during that late April or early May stretch, where it's often pretty good. So
I think you hit it right on the head there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not much runoff, and certainly we had southwest winds consistently throughout the month of April and May. We never really got east winds or stormy conditions. It was pleasant, I would say. We had a pleasant summer, or spring and into early summer. Yeah. So switch to Erie.
Yeah, you can kind of just touch on what I know you spent a nice amount of trips out on Lake Erie, and you can just kind of share what you saw and experienced.
Yeah, Lake Erie was again a bit different, even more so away from what we really like to see with the lake, which was a couple of years ago. If you witnessed the great walleye fishing that we had offshore, being able to boat limits pretty quickly and be able to come back to port in quick hurry. That again, for the second year in a row, didn't happen. That offshore bite, as a matter of fact, I would say eroded even more than it did last year in the 2020 year. So, I think that offshore bite was so few and so few number of walleye that were out there. It was hard to count on it. You would normally go out there, let's say, take a boo for a couple hours near the end of a trip, for an example, to see if there's even an inkling of a walleye school showing up at, let's say, the Fingers off of Port Maitland. Some of the offshore areas of 65 to 85 feet of water, it just didn't seem to produce consistent numbers at all. You would go out there and sure, you would mark lots of bait. You may even mark a bunch of fish, but it did not seem to set up the way it did a couple years ago. Last year, 2020, we were scratching our heads saying, maybe the Eastern Basin filled up with warm water that year because our spring was exceptionally warm. Our month of June was extremely warm in 2020. I think we broke records with the number of heat advisory days, and we had southwest winds that pushed a lot of warm water. No doubt we had top to bottom, hot tub like water in the Eastern Basin. And we contributed our lack of walleye in the Eastern Basin in 2020 offshore bite because of that. Because the Western Basin fish, predominantly coming from the west, didn't round the corner around the long point and come into the Eastern Basin. They stopped and stayed in the Central Basin during the middle of the summer. And it seems like that happened again this year. But this year was a bit different in water temps. Yeah, we had warm water temps, but it wasn't the situation where it was as soupy as it was in 2020. There was still a thermocline. There was still, the opportunity, lots of bait. It had, I would say, equivalent conditions to what we had in 2019 for an offshore, water conditions, but the fish just simply didn't show up yet again. And I don't know why. And I haven't heard anybody talk to us about why that might have happened again this year. They did catch lots of walleye. And yes, Lake Erie is at a record high of number of walleye population. They caught a lot in the Central Basin during the middle of the summer and in the Western Basin, of course, as well. So I don't know what to say. Last year I thought it was just going to be an anomaly of bad fishing, and then we would be returned back to amazing fishing in 2021. That was my thoughts going into 2021 this time last year, and now I really don't know. I'm not banking on it. I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to catch limits again, like we did in 2019, 2018. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that the walleye do round the corner and come into the Eastern Basin like they did, for this year and for following years. But certainly this in 2021, it was tough. It was tough go. I say tough because, like I said, the offshore bite was few and far between in order for consistent bite. So a lot of what I've noticed is a lot of the weekend guys would go back to where they caught fish in previous years. So they go out into that 65 to 80 feet of water. Weekend after weekend, they would go out there and their numbers would be dismal. 1-2 fish a trip kind of thing. And that was kind of that canary in the mine. You're not hearing any reports of good numbers of fish caught offshore. Until we did, we weren't going to change our tactics. And that's exactly what we did throughout the entire course of the summer. We stayed shallow, we stayed and fished and grind. It was a grind. No doubt about it. It's tough fishing in shallow, around structure, close to bottom, doing the best you can to keep lines from scraping zebras, zebra mussels, and catching your walleye that way. I can't say that I had limits in any of my trips on Lake Erie this year for all guys in the boat. I don't think I reached full limits for anybody, for all the guys in the boat this year. So, where, a couple years ago, it was one of those things where you can almost bank on it. You can say to the guys coming in the afternoon, okay, show up at the dock at 10 a.m. because, our morning trip's going to be done by then. So we were calling our guys in the morning to come earlier. That's certainly a thing of the past in my mind now. So I don't know what to expect this coming year. Perch fishing seems to have improved though. Around Point Avenue, there was decent size perch, bigger perch. In past falls, I think we would have caught a lot of, small perch, that 8 to 9 inches. It seems like we're catching a whole lot more bigger perch now. I don't know why, but this past fall, decent sized perch, and hopefully that trend continues. Anything else you can think of, Mark?
That's kind of all I got for now. I wonder if anybody else has any other questions for you, Shane, out there, or if anyone has anything else to add to the conversation.
Any questions at all? I didn't talk at all about fishing techniques or tackle, anything of that sort. If you do have any, any thoughts or questions on any of that stuff, by all means.
I'll make mention too, like for those interested, Shane and I are going to continue our winter series of seminars in cooperation with Grimsby Tackle. Our first one is for next Friday, 7 o'clock. Again, it'll be done via Zoom, and we'll send out the link for that. And we're going to start with talking about the spring in Lake Ontario for salmon and trout. So you can stay tuned for that, and other ones coming in the next couple months as we ramp up for springtime. I think we'll probably have maybe 4 in total for Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, but who knows what else we come up with.
Yeah, sounds good. Is there any particular topics that anyone from here would like to hear in our seminar series? Thanks, Lars. Well, that's about all I got, Mark. Yeah, again, if there's any questions or things about the FMZ, council, you want to bring, any questions to council, let me know. Send me an email, and I can relay that information. Interestingly enough, our lake manager for the Lake Ontario Management Unit is Andy Todd. He was away on secondment for a little over a year. So our acting manager, he's now going to be head of the Eastern Subcommittee. So the Lake Ontario is divided into Eastern Subcommittee and Western Subcommittee. And the West is, our conversations tend to be more about the cold water species, the salmon and the trout. Meanwhile, the East is more about walleye, muskie, bass in the Bay of Quinte and into the Kingston and down the St. Lawrence. So they have a bit of a different flavor. So Andy is returned to the council as the lake manager, but also chairing or heading up the Western Subcommittee. And I think that's going to be great for us coming, in the next year, as we, we'll likely see a little bit more, interaction, I would say, with the council. meetings and information will be a little more forthcoming, I would say. And it'll definitely help us to kind of gain a better idea of what's happening on the lake going forward. So looking forward to that, him returning back as the manager. I think, Mark, you're on mute there. Still on mute. Mark, is your button working? There we
Sorry,
are.
I'm sorry, I forgot that I was on mute there. Lars, I've got you on mute now. If you wanted to have a few words to say, I did some opening announcements. I gave a little rundown for some of the newcomers about the club before you joined earlier, but you can have the floor now if you'd like.
Fabulous. How's everybody doing? Thanks for coming out, Shane. Awesome.
Thanks, Lars.
This works pretty good. This Zoom meeting, I like this. At least we get to see people and have a conversation. That's all. I got nothing. I've been working all weekend, so I'm just caught up on some sleep today. So it's like, oh crap, the meeting. How do I get on? Oh crap. But I figured it out. Here we are. Everybody looks good except for me.
I like your beard.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's growing out. It's a COVID beard.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was awesome. So are we trying to do this for next meeting as well?
Well, I think we have to because there's tight limits on gatherings right now. So especially indoors. So, and for those that aren't aware, like we used to meet at the Grimsby Legion the first Tuesday of every month, but for the last while, once the Legion did reopen, they've been closed, I think Mondays and Tuesdays. So it hadn't even been an option for us for the last little while. So, we did have a meeting in November when we were we did have it at the store. And that might be our option. We'll have to just take things month by month as things go here. So I don't know, we can meet as an executive. I know we were talking about having a meeting in the next week or two to plan things out as best we can, and we can just see what we can do for a February meeting for maybe another guest speaker via Zoom. So we'll go from there.
I have a guest speaker lined up. In return, is this a corporate Zoom account or is this a freebie?
Well, this is Roman, who does the IT work for the store. He allowed us to use his account for this tonight. So
okay, I'm looking to get a Zoom meeting set up. This is for Dave Lawson, a friend of mine that's from out in towards the Bowmanville area. Well, he actually lives up on Lake Sturgeon Lake, but he's wanting to put together a meeting in preparation to talk to the Minister of Natural Resources to talk about the tributaries and changing some of the regulations and whatnot. So he wants to set up a preliminary meeting to discuss what content we're going to put together for that meeting. Can we use this Zoom account to do that? And in return, what he said is he would be our guest speaker for one of our meetings.
Okay, well, I'll mention that to Roman, and I think he'd be all right with that. So I'll get back to you. I'll chat with him tomorrow. So
okay, that'd be good.
Yeah, no, Dave would be a nice guest speaker. I know he has spoken a time before over the years at club meetings, and he was a good friend of Gadzo and John Slades for many years too.
Yeah,
So I don't know. Does anyone else have anything else to say or share or add to the meeting? Any questions about the club or anything?
The big fish competition, that's still going. That's starting up again this year for sure. For tournaments and derbies, I guess we're just gonna play it by ear for now.
Well, yep, for now. So we're just gonna go over the results of the 2021 Big Fish Contest, and we can announce the winners of that at the February meeting. But yeah, the 2022 Big Fish Contest is underway now, and for those who want to be eligible for that, they have to have their dues paid by we'll say by the first Tuesday of February, so they can bring their dues to Grimsby Tackle. So, you can join the club at any point and attend any meetings that you want, but if you want to be eligible for that, you have to have your dues paid by then. So,
Fabulous.
yeah. I don't know, Rob or Amanda. Oh, Shad's asking, does the club have a youth division? No, we don't, Shad, for the Big Fish Contest. We do encourage the youth coming out, and I suppose we've never really had kids participating, but we certainly encourage it. So, do you recall anything, Shane, like in the past, like say hypothetically, if your son caught a fish, he would have to have his own membership. It's not like the Straight Line Anglers isn't a family membership, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's what I did is I paid for, Aiden to be a member for the years that he was a member of the Straight Line Anglers. If there's anything that I could recommend locally to get involved, youth getting involved, the Junior Bassmasters is probably the best program, I would say, in this area. And of course, it's not Straight Line Anglers, but it is a great organization, run by some great people in St. Catharines. So I think they meet at the library still. Or when they do meet face to face, it'll be at the library. Otherwise, it's on Zoom, and they have tournaments and monthly meetings. Teach the kids a lot of stuff. It's a really good program. It's worth the money for sure.
As well, for the last 2 years, the St. Catharines Game and Fish has run their Kids Day competition event virtually throughout the summer months, and as opposed to a one-day event that used to be past. So I assume they'll be doing the same format again, and the Straight Line Anglers Club can share that information once it becomes available. Anyone's welcome to participate in that. They've had people from all over the province playing along. So it's been a really cool, easy format to involve kids and families. So, and I know also, I don't think he's in on the call right now, but Bill Matthews, one of our new members, he has a strong interest to hopefully put together some sort of a kids event, maybe a one-day event in the spring or in the summer, like a shore fishing event for the community. So, and he's got some potential sponsors too. So that's something else that we can plan and maybe work together. I know the Straight Line Club has been wanting to do some youth stuff on their own for a number of years, but it just hasn't happened. But we've partnered with other groups in the past to do things. So for anybody who might be interested in that, just keep that in mind, and we'll pass that information along as we move forward. So, you got anything else, Lars?
Man, a few words, Mark.
Yeah, the strong silent type.
The face, just the face.
Yeah. Well, so we have recorded this meeting, so we'll get this uploaded. We'll probably upload it to the Grimsby Tackle YouTube account, but then we'll share that. So for those that were unable to attend tonight, they can catch up on the information whenever they can. So, but I guess if that's all, thanks Shane for sharing. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Shane.
And,
No problem at all, guys. Always.
Just
thank
when you
you.
want to take me up on that offer, just let me know, eh?
Sure.
I'll wear my best dress. Don't worry.
In high heels, I bet.
All right. Well, take care, everyone. Stay safe and hopefully we can meet regularly